Icon series.
Morning, children. So today we are going to start a new lesson, and that is about the first aeroplane. So we know that we have got a lot of different types of mode of transportation. We have road transportations, we have railways, okay, we have water transportation also. So the first one to evolve was road transportation because people used to walk from one place to another. Second, water transportation. Okay, people used to swim or use some hollow woods in the areas where they lived, because early settlements usually happened near the water sources. Later they started to build boats and use them for journeys, voyages. Then they made huge ships. They went to different continents, and they brought a lot of changes in the ships also. Some ships were designed to carry huge luggage or things, something like goods. Some were designed only for the traveling of people. So there happened some kind of changes in that. Then came the railways. They started developing railway tracks, railway wagons, steam engine, James Watt. So he developed this steam engine, and that actually helped very much in the establishment of a train or rail services. But throughout all this time, people always had a dream, and that was to fly. They were able to run, they were able to walk, they were able to swim, they were able to ride animals. But only one thing that they could never do was nothing else but to fly. If we check the history, we can see a lot of people tried a lot of different things. So many people believed that we do not have wings, and that's why we cannot fly. So if we check the history, we can see some people who believed that if we have wings, we can fly. They made artificial wings. Some people even killed birds, collected their feathers and attached them to different objects, made very big wings, tied it to their hands and tried to fly. Some people made these wings made up of cloth, some made these wings out of leather. So different types of things they started to use, but they all died. That's it. Some people, they will tie this wing on their hand, go on top of a mountain or rock or something like that, and from here they will try to fly. Actually, they want to go in this way, but they went in this way. Because our body is not designed to fly without any assistance. That is the biggest problem. Most of these people who tried these kinds of things were foolish people. Meanwhile, the Chinese people came up with the idea of a thing called kite. Right? A flat sheet of paper which has got some bamboo frames, which has got some tails, and this is controlled using thread. So they started flying these kinds of kites in the sky, and they were able to bring different shapes of kites also. Right? But we are flying things, but we are not flying. When we check this thing like Ramayana, there is a villain character in Ramayana, the king of Sri Lanka. What is his name? Ravana. Okay, he had an aeroplane that was called Pushpaka Vimana. Okay, So when we check these epics, we can find these kinds of what we call it, mode of transportation, or machines which can fly. But these are all just imagination, and we cannot use them because we never had such kind of technology. So once when people started to think or use their brain, they started making different attempts so that they can also fly in the sky. But much of them simply failed because they were doing it something like unscientific. There is a science behind it, and if we try to understand the science behind it, then actually this effort or this attempt to fly in the sky actually can be made possible. Okay, so in this lesson actually what we see now, we people have thought in the positive way, in the scientific way. Now we have got a good number of modes of transportation in air also. We have got different kinds of flights. Smaller flights are there, bigger flights are there, jumbo jets are there, the biggest ones. Helicopters are there. Helicopters are also in different types. Then we have even gone beyond the air. Birds and all these kinds of flights and all, they go only in the air. But we have developed rockets and space shuttles which can go even beyond that into the space. Isn't it? Yeah. Now we have got flights, we have got helicopters, we have developed rockets, we have developed a space shuttle, we can go and come back also. So how was this made? How was it made possible? That was made possible because of the scientific thinking. Right? So what was the basic scientific thinking that happened in the development of these aeroplanes in the early stages? See, once when we start it, then developing that into the next level is a different thing. Starting it in the basic level, the initial way is the most important thing. So there were two American brothers. The first one was Wilbur Wright. Wilbur Wright was the first one, and the second one was Orville Wright. Okay, the first one was Wilbur Wright, and the second one was Orville Wright, and they were the third and the fourth brothers, I guess, out of the 7 children they had in the family. Leave it. It doesn't matter much. So Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright, they were famously known as the Wright brothers. What were they famously called? They were called the Wright brothers. They were the people who made this particular dream of human beings to fly in the air possible, come true. Clear? So Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright, who belonged to America, commonly known as the Wright brothers, were the first people who made it possible to fly in the air. Okay, what did they do? They designed, they made, and they flew the first aircraft in the world. Okay, so what did they do? They designed, they made, and they flew. Flew means piloted into the air the first motorized aircrafts. Okay, it's very difficult to control the things in the air, but they made all these things possible for the first time. So who were they? Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright, two Americans, okay, who always had this dream of developing something with which they can fly into the air, made the first flight. Okay, so as we go into the details, we need to understand one thing, that the first machine, right, the first thing that they have invented or created was a small glider. Glider. So what do you mean by a glider? Yeah, something like a glide is known as a glider. I'll show you a picture of a glider. See, there is no motor for that. There is no engine for that. Okay, this is a modern glider. Obviously, this is a modern glider. Then it was more like a box kind of a stuff. But whatever, a glider will never have an engine. Okay, there will be some equipments for us to understand the direction, the north, east, south and west. A compass will be there in that, a small one. Then a small meter which shows the air speed, at what speed the air is blowing in this particular time. So there will be small equipments which can be used for assessing these things. Okay, the remaining things have to be done by the man who is gliding on that. Right? So the first model that they made was a glider. It was okay, but it could not be controlled by the human beings. It was more like a kite. They made this glider and they started flying it unmanned. Unmanned means there won't be any man inside it. There won't be any man inside it. Right? And just like a kite, they used it to fly it. And they arched the tips of the glider wings slightly. So the wings are there, no? Wings, for example, if we say, okay, I'll show you an image of this. So it was, as I said, it was like a box. Here, top one layer is there, bottom one layer is there. And there, what they did was, instead of keeping it a square, okay, instead of keeping it a square, they arched it. Means, the edge of the wings were like this earlier. Now, they made it a bit smoother one. Okay, so they made this particular change for what? For getting more control of it. So when this glider is moving straight, there is no problem. If it has to come down or it has to take a turn this way or that way, then controlling the glider is a difficult task. So what did they do? They adjusted the edge part of the wings so that they can make more control of it. Okay, initially that was a good idea. Initially that was a good idea, but they couldn't achieve complete success in that. They couldn't achieve complete success in that. So what they did was, they started observing birds. Okay, they started to observe birds because birds are animals that fly into the air. So when they start to fly, how does their wings move? When they are in the air, how do they move their wings? If they have to come down or if they have to take a turn. So Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright, the two brothers, spend a lot of time observing the birds, studying how they adjust to their wings and recording that. Okay, they checked different types of birds because some birds are very small and they won't fly for longer time, but some birds are very big. For example, there is a bird called albatross. Albatross is a seabird. Means they fly over the sea for continuously for hours together. Then kites are there, eagles are there, vultures are there. So these kinds of bigger birds are more important because the aeroplane that they design are also going to be a heavy one. isn't it? So how these birds adjust their wings, making the curves, turns and all, if we observe that carefully and if we can make some such changes artificially. Okay, because in an aeroplane has wings. Birds also have wings, but birds flutter it, aeroplane will not flutter it. Isn't it? Will an aeroplane flutter its wings before it take off? No. But there are some parts in that. Okay. So, Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright spend a lot of time studying, observing different types of birds, how they adjust their wings, how they make the arches. The edge of the wing, if this is a wing, when they have to take a turn, some birds will arch it like this. Can you see? It arches like this. Okay, some goes a bit down. So how they adjust these wings when they are in the flight has to be observed, and how they can bring that onto this particular aeroplane. They spend years together on this research, right? So for years together, these two brothers, the Wright brothers, spend a lot of time observing birds. So when they soared into the air, soar means to fly off into the air, right? Once they are airborne means when they are in the air, how they flap their wings, flap means moving up and down. Okay, and how they control their speed. Sometimes the birds fly very fast. Sometimes they fly very slow, casually, normally. So how they achieve this? Sometimes what happens, it will be very windy. Windy means, the wind will be blowing in very high speed. So how do they adjust themselves so that they can, fly without any problem in the air? And when they are to come and perch means when they come back onto the earth, or when they are about to sit somewhere, how do they adjust their wings? Right? So they observed all these things for years together, and they spend 3 years experimenting them. One after another, changing thoughts, testing, failing, another plan, testing, somewhat achievement, again improvement, failing, another one. 3 years, these two brothers worked hard to make one glider with all the maximum possible facilities of flying it. Whatever they have learned from observing these birds, they have put on that flight. Right? They struggled, but after 3 years, they made a big glider again. But when they were trying to fly this, it was an unmanned one. Unmanned one means there will not be any man sitting inside this glider to control it. Impossible. Right? There won't be any man sitting inside it to control it. Okay? So, when they tested this glider they made, they understood one thing, and that was the most difficult task in making this airplane is nothing else but controlling it while flying. So what is the toughest task? To control it while flying. When it is in the air, how to control it? If they have to take a turn, how to control the flight? If they have to go up, how to control it? Go down, how to control it? If there is a heavy wind coming up, how to control it? So controlling this flight without any failure in the air is the toughest task in making a flight. Okay? So that was one thing that they have realized. But They were not afraid of failure. See, they spent a lot of time, around 1 or 2 years, observing the birds. Then they put their effort for about 3 years. They made a glider. They couldn't fly it successfully. In case, if in the place of these Wright brothers, we were there, what would we do? We will throw all these kinds of things as a waste and we will go and do something else. But Wright brothers were not like that. They were not afraid of failures. That's the most important thing. Years and years, they wasted like anything, but they were not ready to waste it for anything. Okay, if this is not working, let us try the next thing. Change, think, change the thoughts, bring new ideas, try to implement them, be successful. If not one idea, another idea will be definitely successful. So with all these learnings, with all their efforts, they made another glider and they decided to test it. So there is a place called North Carolina in America. Okay. There is a place called North Carolina in America, and there in North Carolina there is a place called Kitty Hawk. Okay, there is a place called Kitty Hawk. This is a remote area. Remote means a distant area where there are not much people living. It's an open place, not disturbed by anybody, and even if they do something there, it won't disturb anybody. That is what we call a remote area. And this area was very suitable for testing this glider. They made the glider, now they want to test it. So where can they test it? They need to test it on an open place because it has to fly up, make some rounds and come back, isn't it? So they have to try this somewhere where there are enough open place around them. So they decided to go to this place, and another advantage of this area was there was enough wind over there. It was a windy place. Again, it was a sandy area. Sandy area with some hills around. Okay, so Kitty Hawk in North Carolina was suitable for Wright brothers to check the flight they have made, to test fly the flight they have made, because it was a remote area. First of all, it was a remote area. It was a windy region. There was enough wind over there. The land was sandy and there were some hills around it also. Okay, so they can adjust whether to fly up or down and all these kinds of things. Okay, so Wright brothers decided to go to Kitty Hawk in North Carolina, a remote place with a good amount of wind, which was a sandy, and some hills around it to check their glider. Right? This happened in 1900. In 1900, the Wright brothers were able to make a successful flight with a glider that they have made. In 1900, Wright brothers were able to make a successful flight with a glider at Kitty Hawk. So the first successful glider that they have tried was about 50 pound heavy. A pound is equal to that of a half kilogram. So 50 pound means around 25 kilograms. Okay, there was no motor in that, there was no engine in that. Okay, these were just like kites, huge kites, right? So its wingspan was around 17 foot. Wingspan means what? Yeah, if this is a body and if this is a wing, okay, wingspan is from the tip of one wing to the tip of other wing. Means from here to here. Okay, so wingspan is the total length of wings including the body from one tip to the other tip. Okay, so the maximum extent of a wing, it can be of a bird, it can be of a flight, anything. It's measured from a tip of one wing to the tip of other wing. Okay, so the first model or successful model of a glider made by Wright brothers and successfully tested in 1990 weighed 50 pounds and was with a wingspan of 17 foot. Okay, so that was successful, and then Wright brothers tried the same with a man on that. One of them sat on this particular glider they have made, and then they tested it again. Okay, and actually that was the first kind of a glider which had a pilot in that. Who is a pilot? Who is a pilot? Yeah, the person who drives a bus is called a driver. Okay, in the same way, there is a person who leads this particular aeroplane, and they are called the pilots. Okay, so this particular glider that is Wright brothers tried in 1900 successfully was the first glider to have a man sitting in that, a piloted aeroplane. Okay, that was without any engine. Now, see, they had been trying for this for years, isn't it? The Wright brothers had been trying to achieve this particular point for years. They did a lot of homeworks, lot of studies, research, observations, experiments, failures, reworks, recheckings, reapplications, isn't it? They did a lot of things for so many years, and finally they achieved some success in the year 1900. Now, how do they feel then? What do you think? How would have they felt then, the Wright brothers? They became very happy. They became very successful. Okay, now they wanted to make a bigger one. They wanted to make a bigger one. Okay, because see, the success that they achieved at this particular point was a bigger one. Words cannot explain that. After years and years of hard work, finally there comes a result. They were out of this world, and then they decided we will make another one which will be much bigger than this. In the very next year, in 1901, the Wright brothers came with a bigger one. Okay, much bigger than this thing, the first flown one. Now it weighed something around 100 pounds. It weighed double. This was 50 pounds and this is 100 pounds. But it didn't fly. There happened a lot of problems. The wings were not sufficient enough to lift it into the air. What happened? Nothing happened. It started to spin. On the floor itself, it started to spin and crashed. In 1900, they made the first successful flight, and in 1901, they came with another flight which did not even take off. There were issues. Okay, so what do they do now? One more year wasted. That's it. No problem. Okay, we increased with the size, but something went wrong. What went wrong? Let us identify it. Let us understand where we have gone wrong and let us rectify that and let us make a bigger one. That was what was in the mind of Wright brothers. Okay, they thought of only one thing. Okay, something went wrong with this. No problem. We will identify what the problem was. We will try to rectify it. And in the next time when we make the bigger one, we will rectify that. It is good that we failed in this. Okay, it's good that we failed in this so that we can make a better one next time. So this is something that we have to learn from the lives of these people. If we fail in achieving something, we become disturbed. Isn't it? We become disturbed. We will leave it aside and we will go and do something else. That is not the good thing to do. If we failed to achieve something, the only thing that we need to do is understand what went wrong. Understand what went wrong, identify that particular problem in that what we did and rectify that. Imagine Wright brothers felt that we couldn't do it. The first brother told the second brother, my dear brother, we cannot do it. Okay brother, we will throw it and go and do something else. What would have happened if they decided it so? What would have happened? That is not the attitude that we have to develop towards life. There will be problems, there will be failures. See, even after trying for years, struggling for years, what happened? Nothing happened. It is spin and crashed. It did nothing else. Turned round and around because the wings that they had fit to this 100-pound airplane or the glider was not strong enough to lift it. Okay, so that was a failure, right? So this is something that we have to learn from the lives of these people. It's not just Wright brothers, it's the same thing has happened in the lives of many people who achieved great things. They didn't throw their effort out with the first or second failure. They may fail again and again, but these failures should be faced with a different outlook. We should not be afraid of failures. That's the most important thing that we have to learn in our life. If we face the failure now, the first thing what we have to think is why I failed. We should not compare it with the hard work that we did and the result we got. It may not be the same. Despite all the hard, we may study very hard. We may leave only one question out, but in the exam that question came. Isn't it? So after facing this thing called failure, what we need to do is observe the result, observe the process, understand where we went wrong or why we failed, and based on that, we need to change the way we look at the things or we do the things. Right? So the same thing was done by the Wright brothers also, and that is why they came up with this particular thing, the first airplane. Okay, so this is for the day. And what happened after that? So they made the first successful flight, unmanned flight in 1990 at Kitty Hawk. The second attempt failed and we are there. Now we will go to the details of this, what happened later in our next class. Okay, so till then, take care.